Hello everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Building the Future. So good morning, just about morning everybody. Welcome, as I said, to episode 3 of Learning Curve Group's monthly webinar series. This is Building the Future, a series which we've designed to enhance the learning that our housing and housing adjacent apprentices are doing, but also to provide important information, learning, CPD, off the job for anyone who attends. Just a little bit about Learning Curve Group for those of you that are not already working with us. We're a national training and education specialists. We've been around since 2004. We offer a huge range of educational courses. We've got flexible learning, military preparation colleges, hair and beauty, and of course our apprenticeships. Our key apprenticeship areas are health and social care, business professions, logistics, and of course housing and property, which is one of our biggest growth areas within the business at the moment. Today, we've got the absolute pleasure of having Lara Oyedele here to speak to us today about the importance of diversity and representation within the housing sector. Lara is the immediate past president of the CIH, a board member at Housing 21, CEO of Black on Board Ltd, and a prolific Windrush campaigner as well. Lara, thank you so much for giving us your time today. We really do appreciate it. We have got the huge pleasure of welcoming Lara to speak to us today about representation, diversity, and how we ensure equality within our sector. So I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to hand over to you, Lara. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay, and just about good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming today, and thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. I represent a particular group of the population, and the first box I'm going to tick is the old people group. Okay, I'm almost 60. I know I don't look it, but I'm almost 60, so just bear with me. I'm going to see if I can share my screen without losing anybody. So I'm ticking the old age box. Yeah, so be kind. Be kind to me. Let's see if this works. Let me just presenter mode. So what can you guys see?
I can see your whole desktop.
Okay, which is probably not what you need, but it doesn't matter. I can make it work.
But we can see your slides.
Yeah. Okay. Just bear with me. I work better on Zoom for some reason. I always find Teams a bit. There's always a lot going on Teams. There you go. How does that look?
Looking great.
Okay. So, yes, Lindsay has given me a great introduction. Thank you so much. And I'm the kind of person who likes to get things done and hopefully change the world in my own little yet positive way. So the question I've asked myself today, the reason I'm looking over to the other side is to look at my slide, is does equality and representation matter in housing? Can you still see my screen, Lindsay?
No, you've taken it off the screen.
Okay, so whenever I move it, I'm using two what do you call it?
2 screens.
Yeah, and whenever I move it from one screen to the other, it doesn't like it. So I'm gonna stick and start again and just keep it on one screen.
Have you got it saved on your computer?
Yes, it is on my desktop.
Because you could just, if you click share and then scroll all the way down to the bottom and then browse my computer and find it, it'll do PowerPoint Live.
Okay, let's do that one. Share.
Scroll all the way down to browse my computer.
See, I can't see that. Presenter mode, screen.
Right down at the bottom.
No, it's not giving me much to scroll.
Oh.
No, it gives me add background, but let's just get on with it. I can do this. It's fine.
That's good. We can see it now.
We can do this. So the answer to my question obviously is yes, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. So for those of you who don't know a little about me, you'll understand while I'm sharing this background with you, because there's a reason for me being here today and also having such a how can I put it, a passionate opinion about this topic. So I work in housing because I experienced homelessness at the age of 19. I was living in a bedsit, and I had a really bad landlord who evicted me when I went on holiday. So I came back home to find that everything I owned, which wasn't a lot, so feeling 2 shopping trolleys, was in the front garden, and he'd changed the locks. And that's how I became homeless, and I had nowhere to live. So I was sleeping rough, slept in bus stations, phone boxes. Well, those were the days when there was lots of phone boxes, a long, long time ago. And I had a part-time job as a cleaner. So I was able to often stay in the offices where I had to clean. So I was moving around a lot, but literally did not have a roof over my head. And then I eventually got a council flat. I think I was homeless for about 6 months, got a council flat. And that was my first introduction to social housing that I was aware of. It's only now that I look back and I speak to my parents, I realize we actually grew up in a council house, but I didn't know that at the time. It was just our house where we lived. Okay, but as a grown up, obviously I'd left home, was living on my own, became homeless, got a council flat, and I thought, oh, these people are very nice. They've housed me, and the rent was really cheap, which was great. So I was then able to finish my A levels and go to university and study journalism. And long story, I decided I didn't want to be a journalist anymore, even though I graduated in that profession and worked as a journalist for about 1.5 years. Decided I want to work in housing because of the experience that I had prior. I said I want to make a difference to people's lives, and I didn't think journalism was the route at the time. And I think it's because I went into corporate journalism, I didn't feel I was making a difference to people's lives. So I went to do the Masters in Housing at the LSE, which was brilliant. It gave me a really good foundation in terms of social policy, social history, economics, finance, politics, the works. And it really set me up to be I think it gave me a really good foundation in terms of my understanding of social housing from different aspects of sort of academic study. And that's also the time that I joined the CIH. So my CIH membership goes back to 1995. I've been consistently a member of the CIH ever since then. Anyway, I had a housing career, became the CEO of a housing association in 2006. And then people kept telling me I was one of the youngest, whatever, this, that, and the other. And then I set up an organization called BME National in 2009, which is a collection of the housing associations. They came out of what we now called Windrush, or the 1980s riots, or the 1960s riots, the housing associations that were specifically set up to support ethnic minority groups who were not at the time getting access to mainstream housing because of something that existed that was called the Sons and Fathers. I think it was daughters and whatever. So the local connections. So there was a name for it. But anyway, what it meant was that if you were new to an area, you were not entitled to social housing. So these housing associations were set up to provide homes for the people who are not accessing homes in the normal way. Now, many of you may or may not know that Metropolitan Thames Valley, that giant housing association that we all know, was one of those that was set up in the 60s in response to the Windrush generation who came to the country, could not get homes, and they clubbed together, formed like a social club, and started what was then called Metropolitan Coloured People's Housing Association, and it started in Nottingham. A lot of people don't know that. So Metropolitan, what is now called Metropolitan Thames Valley, has that root that came from what we call the BME housing movement. Anyway, the not so good bit of my story was that in 2013 I was suspended as the CEO for various reasons. I didn't do anything wrong, but these things happen. I fell out with the board fell out with me. They said I did this, I said I didn't, yada, yada, yada. So it was a really bad time in my life, but I'm put it in there for a reason. You'll understand soon that life is not always straightforward. You know, people that you feel are successful or you think, oh, they've done really well. There's always ups and downs in everybody's career. Moving forward in 2017, I set up my own private housing company called Lara Ltd. Because as a result of the suspension, I struggled to get work in the sector. People didn't want to employ me. So I thought, well, I'm still passionate about housing. I'm still passionate about giving people a home. So I thought I need to think of a different way to be involved in providing homes for people that don't have a lot of money. And what I did is I sold my houses in London and moved to Yorkshire, where property is cheap, and I have a little portfolio of 9 properties, and I rent them out to families at affordable rent because I managed to get good deals. And my USP is that the rents will always be below the local housing allowance. That's what makes me my own version of a social landlord. So none of my tenants pay above the local housing allowance. I hope you all know what the LHA is. If you don't, you should. So it's called the local housing allowance. Anyway, and then 2018, I'm giving back to the universe. I became the chair of a homelessness charity, the kind of charity that would have helped when I was homeless at 19. So it's called Hope Housing. It's based in Bradford, where I live. And what we do is we do outreach work, and we speak to people who are sleeping under the arches, car parks, in the parks, in places where people shouldn't be sleeping, and we find them emergency accommodation, hostel accommodation, or rooms in people's homes who have spare rooms. So it's frontline solution to homelessness. It's acute. We're not able to provide a long-term solution because, as you will all know, there's a shortage of move-on accommodation. But our primary concern is that people are not sleeping in the cold outside, where it's wet, and people aren't nice to homeless people. In 2020, off the back of when Black Lives Matters was, everybody was out in the streets. I was at home. I didn't want to catch COVID and I got bad knees. So I thought, what am I going to do to support the movement? So I then set up Black on Board, which came about from me now being, I think I forgot to hear that, but Lindsay did mention that I'm a board member of a couple of housing associations. So me being a CEO, being in the boardrooms and realizing there's very few people that look like me in those rooms, and asking myself why. And that's the reason I set up Black on Board Limited. And it's one of the part of my job that keeps me busy the most, and I love doing it. And the role of Black on Board is to encourage primarily Black and brown people, but not exclusively, anyone that wants to become a board member, a trustee, non-exec director, because that's where the decisions are made. And I feel those rooms need to be representative. And that's why I set up Black on Board. And then God knows how this happened. 2022, I was elected as vice president of the Chartered Institute of Housing. And another thing I say to people that I work with is, you have to try, you have to put yourself forward, and you have to apply. I never in a million years thought that I would ever be president of anything. And I saw the advert for vice president and I thought, oh, this looks interesting. I'll give it a go. I'll never win, but at least I can add it to the list of things that I've tried. And surprise, surprise, so many people voted for me. I won. So I spent the most of last year, 2023, it's a great year. I loved it. I was the president of the Chartered Institute of Housing. I went to so many events, so many conferences, webinars, rocked up at so many people's online webinars, did about 30 lunch and learn sessions, and spoke to a whole load of people in housing. And two of my biggest observations, there's more which I will do in post later. Two of my biggest observations were, one, that the leadership teams in the housing sector are still not representative of the tenants and staff that run housing organisations. And this is across the board. This is in local authorities, housing associations, even private housing organisations. It's predominantly white men who are making all the decisions. However, the recipients of the service and the staff, I'm imagining many of you on the call today, don't fit that label. You may not all be men and you may not all be white men. There are some white men here. I've got nothing against you, but there's no reason why 80% of boardrooms and senior leadership teams are full of white men, and then the rest of us have to make up the remainder. I think it needs to be representative for so many reasons. But anyway, so that was one of the learnings from being present. And the other thing that I observed from being present is that so many people who work in the sector are not members of the Chartered Institute of Housing. And I want to know why. Why are people working in social housing and have not joined the Chartered Institute of Housing to be members? And Chartered Institute of Housing only has circa 18,000 members. between 18 and 22,000, depending on how you count it. Whereas the sector has I've estimated over about 120 to 200,000 staff who work in the sector. So anyway, so that's just my free advertising for the Chartered Institute of Housing. So part of what I wanted to talk about, the reason I gave you this a short summary of my life is so that you can understand where I'm coming from with the conversations I have about equality and diversity. So the main legislation that we talk about is the Equality Act. There are others, and the Equality Act covers 9 protected characteristics. Okay, so you probably know this already. So you've got age, gender, race, etc., etc. I won't read it because you can see it on the screen. Now, I only tick. Okay, I guess I'm old, so I tick age. Okay, I'm 58. Yes, I tick age. But in terms of my experience at work and the issues that I don't say upset me, the issues that tax me in the sector, I bring the viewpoint of a Black woman. So I don't consider myself to be disabled. I've never been pregnant. I'm not married. I'm not a lesbian. I've never had my gender reassigned. And guess what? I'm not even religious. So I don't believe in religion. So I can only speak for 2 of these, which is Black and female. Those are the 2 things that I can attest to. I can give you examples. I can give you an experience. And I can say, these are the things I think you need to do better. So forgive me if I'm biased in that space, that you can maybe translate some of what I'm saying to reflect the other 7 characteristics, or should we say 6, but I'd like to make it clear that I can only speak on in terms of my experience as that of a Black woman. There are other characteristics that I think are not covered by legislation, but do impact on how we behave and how we judge people. So I've got class, for example, accents. There's a lot of people who have issues with accents, neurodiversity, got lived experience. There's a whole range of intersectionality where all these different things affect people, and also domestic violence. I think domestic violence, in terms of the work that we do as housing providers, is something that we need to be aware of. So even if they're not covered under protected characteristics, there are other legislative requirements that ask us to take into account the impact of the work we do on those different, the people, the capacities, the abilities of different kinds of people and what people need. So what I've listed here, and I'm not going to go through each of these because each one of these could be a day session. So there's the Equality Act 2010, which was an amalgamation of, I think, 5 or 6 different acts that came behind it. There used to be the DDA, which is the Disability Discrimination Act, and then I think it was the Race Equality Act and a few others. So they were all combined into what is now the Equality Act 2010. And I cannot believe it's 13 years old already. Now you've got the Housing Act, which has some requirements in there regarding allocations and accessibility and looking at different groups. Of course, you've got the Human Rights Act that talks about the right to privacy, the right to life, the right to fairness. And then you've got the Public Sector Equality Duty, which is part of the EPA, the EPA is the Environmental Protection Act, where I did my dissertation. That's a different one, which is part of the Equality Act, which puts some requirements and demands on public sector organisations to be equitable in the work that they do. Now, I have a question mark over that because often housing associations, who I'm very familiar with, are not clearly defined as public bodies. So that's something for you to think about. We're public bodies when it suits the government, and then we're not when it doesn't suit the government. So it's something for you to consider. Are housing associations public bodies? Local authority housing departments, definitely so. So that's just something for you to think about, a question mark for your notes. When is a housing association a public body and when is it not a public body? Okay, so we've got the Homelessness Reduction Act, and the gender pay regulations is a regulation, not an act. but it puts requirements and organisations over a certain size, I don't remember what the number is, to report on their gender pay gap. Now, the idea is that if we do this, we will eventually start paying everybody equally, irrespective of their gender or their gender assignment. I don't know if that's making a difference yet. I've not read the research, but at least it's pointing that out. My question with the gender pay gap is, why is there no regulation for an ethnicity pay gap? So some organizations do look at the ethnicity pay gap, but there's no requirement. No one's asked for it. So organizations that are forward thinking in this space will do that because they want to do it and they think it's the right thing to do. And then last but not least, I mean, there are many others that I've missed out. I just thought I'd put the ones that are specifically housing that are easy to sort of pinpoint and have a quick discussion about. So I'm sure you've all heard about the tenant satisfaction measures. I'm hoping you're all nodding there. So they're the latest sort of, what shall I say, the latest thing that all housing organisations are looking at the moment, comparing themselves against each other and wondering, are we meeting those measures? Now, for those of you that don't work in the social housing sector, for those of you that are not with housing associations or local authorities, I think it's worth you having a look at the tenant satisfaction measures and just seeing how your organisations compare. Because guess what? Whether your landlord is a local authority or a private landlord like me or a housing association, all tenants want to be treated well. They want to have their repairs done on time. They want to know that when they complain, it'll be heard. And they want to know that they're not going to get discriminated against because they're tall, short, black, white, pregnant, not pregnant, whatever, religious, whatever. So there's nothing wrong with the private sector, those of you working outside of the social housing sector, having a look at those tenant satisfaction measures and even adopting them yourselves. So I'm hoping there's some questions in the chat on the back of that. I've been clearly provocative. So I was going to try and answer the question, which is, of course, it's what's the question again? Of course, equality and representation matters in housing. But it was difficult to think of a useful way of doing that in under an hour. So what I thought was I'd look at the challenges that the sector has and see how many of these that you agree with me would be less challenging or could be better dealt with if we were sensitive to people's needs, under those 9 protected characteristics, and the other ones that I listed that are not protected, that are not listed at the moment. So those of you who are members of the CIH will know that the whole campaign this year is about professionalisation, and the recent legislation has required certain level of qualifications for housing staff. I'm not too conversant with the details because I've got a master's already, and I hope no one's going to ask me to go back to school. I assume I'm at the top level of qualification, well, almost a master's in social housing. But if you look at equity across race and class, and you think about the issues in the sector, you think about damp and mould, if you think about all the exposés that Quajo and Daniel Lewitt and ITV are portraying on our screens, and just look physically at the makeup of the majority of those tenants who are featured in those clips, and tell me you're not asking yourself the question, why, if black and brown people only make up X amount of the population, there's different answers as to how much percentage of the population we make, from 4% to 14%, depends where you read. But if you think that we make up apparently so little, why are we that overrepresented in those cases that are coming to light, that Quajo is bringing to light? I'm sure you all know Quajo. The cases that Daniel Hewitt, who's the ITN reporter, that is doing lots of work on social housing, and also there's a lady like Vicky, I've forgotten her name now, Vicky Spratt, I can't remember. She's a journalist. She works for the I magazine. Why I can only ask the question, why are we overrepresented when it comes to living in bad homes, bad properties? What is wrong with our allocation systems? Is it the fact that because certain groups are highly represented in all the indices of disadvantage, i.e. homeless, poverty, evictions, exclusion from schools, imprisonment, etc., etc., does that mean, therefore, we are more likely to end up in social housing? I don't know the answer. That's a statistical explanation that I have. Or does it mean that once we're in social housing, we're getting ignored? It's one of the two. Either there's more of it in social housing than there should be, or when we get into social housing, the housing officers don't want to talk to us, they're not looking at our complaints. Or is it that we're not happy, we're not good at raising the complaints? I don't think it's the latter, because Quajo's doing a good job. So why is there a correlation physically there? Okay, so that's a question mark. So in a long-winded way, I'm saying that if we were more equitable and we were more representative, maybe those tenants that have been featured would not be getting such a bad service. Who knows? It's an academic question. So the third point I've got on this slide, which is recruitment and reputation, is because we've got people like Quajo showing us up, and I do feel embarrassed by the work he's doing and slightly ashamed, but I think we need him to keep doing that until we get our acts together. But because we have people like him, I am convinced that it makes it more difficult for those of us who are recruiting staff in that sector to get staff. Who'd want to work in this sector? Why would you want to work in this sector? Unless you're really, really passionate about housing. Why would you want to go to a sector that's always getting slagged? I'm allowed to say slagged off. Who's always getting slagged off on TV? Why would you want to join a housing association where, okay, I'm looking at my nieces who are in their 20s. When they want to join an organisation, the first thing they do is go on the website and look at the board and look at the senior leadership team. So if you're a 19-year-old me and you go onto the board of any major housing association or local authority and look at the housing department, you think, well, maybe I don't want to work with them because they don't represent me. There's no one there that looks like me. And anyway, they don't look after the tenants. They're trying to kill the tenants with damp and mould. Maybe I don't want to work for that organisation. So I think there's a serious issue that the sector has, not just with the reputation, but the impact on that reputation and the work that we do in terms of recruiting new people to join the sector, but not just new people, recruiting diverse people to join the sector. Because there is such a shortage of good people, that we have more jobs in this country today than we have people. The younger generation, the people in their 20s and 30s, are more picky about where they go to work. Why come and work for a dodgy housing association when you can work for somebody else? So I think there's something in the sector to say we need to look at how our reputation is impacting on who we recruit and how the lack of perceived diversity in the sector impacts negatively on people who will apply to come and work with us. So I've also put on here rising homelessness. And also the aging housing stock. And again, those are the aging housing stock links into the last one, which is damp and mold, which is again something that everybody's sensitive to and aware of at the moment, which has been an issue that's been around for years. But I remember being a housing officer in the 90s and dealing with damp and mold and leaking sinks and things like that. And I have to confess, I feel very embarrassed to say this, but I was one of those housing officers who said, oh, it's a tenant's lifestyle. They don't know how to use a shower. I never used the word ritual bathing because I didn't know it was a thing, but I thought they use a bucket. They need to open the windows. They cook too much food, etc., etc. That's how I was taught. That's what we were told by the technical team. And we repeated that. And I look back now and I feel embarrassed that I was one of those people. But, you know, I worked in the sector. And the question I have with regards to, I think the point I'm trying to make with regards to repairs, maintenance, which leads on to how we deal with damp and mold is, are we understanding enough of the requirements, the desires, the needs of our residents in terms of how we organize repairs and maintenance? So I'll give you an example. When I ran Odudua Housing Association, we had a lot of Jewish tenants, Orthodox Jewish tenants, and a lot of Muslim tenants. So after a couple of years, we actually came to the decision that we were not going to do any repairs on Friday. We were just not going to have any repairs visits on Friday because it was counterproductive. Most of our residents were busy on Friday. Friday was not a good day to organize repairs and maintenance. Okay, now that took us a while to get around, and if we'd have stuck to the tradition Monday to Friday 9 to 5, then we're creating a difficult situation for a certain group of our tenants. And that's just one example about how we look after our residents, taking into consideration their needs, which are based on different characteristics, protected or otherwise. And it's about looking to see, you know, what you would perceive to be the right thing to do. Okay, so I listen, folks, I could talk forever about this stuff, so I'm going to whiz through to the next slide, but I'm hoping that I'm making some sense, and my points are gelling with you. So I'm going to move on quickly from that. I mean, the point of this slide was to say that a lot of the challenges the sector have an overlay of, I hate to say the word, discrimination or unfair treatment of different groups. That's the point of this slide. So here, can people write in the chat at the moment, Lindsay? Yeah. Can I ask people to write in the chat, who do you think these people are? Who are the people on this slide? Let's make it a little bit interactive before I finish.
Yeah, you should all be able to type into the chat. Got any ideas? Not seen anything yet, Lara. Anyone got any ideas?
Anyone? Who are these people? I'm sure you know who they are, Lindsay. HA, yes.
HA tenants?
Yeah, I need a bit more than that. They're specific HA tenants. Jenny says tenants, yes, they're not all tenants actually. Yes, but yeah, thank you, Victoria. Yes, they are. That's gone. I can't see that one. Yes, can we have a round of applause for Tahir, please? Let me see. Where's I'm trying to find my reaction. Thank you, Tahir. Let me give you a clap. Thank you for that. Tahir, you are so correct. I hope I pronounced your name right. These are a cross section of the tenants that died in Grenfell. Now, there's lots of issues with Grenfell. I'm currently reading the book called Show Me the Bodies by Peter Apps. It's a hard book to read. You get angry, sad, mad, depressed, upset, and you have to put it down and then come back to it. It is shocking. There's so many things that went wrong that created the disaster that is Grenfell. But I'm just going to focus on a couple of points. Now, this is West London. This is Kensington and Chelsea. Now, anyone that lives in London will know that every part of London is diverse. This is a typical cross-section of London. This is nothing weird, unusual, or unique about this. And for those of you that were answering the question, they are not all tenants. There's a couple in the middle. I don't know if you could see 1, 2, 3, third column down. There's a white guy and a white girl with a black hat. I don't know if you can see that. They were tenants of a leaseholder. They were Italian architects who'd moved to London to work. So they weren't tenants. The person who owned that flat had bought it by right to buy, and then he rented it out to them, and they wanted to live up there because of the view of London that you could get. So they were international professionals. So not everyone in this picture is a tenant of the council. So the services that we provide impact on everybody, because we've got leaseholders who then rent it out to tenants or leaseholders who live there. But anyway, so this is a typical cross-section of London. Nothing unique about this. So my next slide I'm going to show you is this. Now, could you put in the chat who these people are and why you think I have a problem with it? Let's see what's happening.
Any ideas?
Yes. Oh God, to hear you I'm going to send you a bag of Haribos. That's my currency of choice. Yeah. Yes. To hear got it right. These are members, staff, professionals, councillors, politicians who gave evidence to the Grenfell inquiry. So can anyone suggest why I might have a problem with this? Apart from the fact they all have a blue background, yeah?
I think Peter's already put into the chat.
Oh, sorry.
Just that they're all white.
Exactly. So the question I'm asking, again, I don't know the answers, but I have to ask these questions. Thank you, Peter. I can't see all of the chat. Thank you. Thank you, everyone that's put something in the chat. The question I'm asking myself is it, are you telling me that we cannot find anyone that looks like this lot who is capable of doing the work that these people do? Do we not have any black and brown architects, surveyors, lawyers, politicians, decision makers, etc., etc.? I suggest we do, but how come this inquiry panel looks like this? I don't have the answers. I'm asking the questions, and I'm hoping that with these questions, it will make you think about the decisions you make and the organizations you go and the things that you say. I'm almost out of time. So it's this kind of physical thing that I look at as a Black woman, and I'm asking myself, am I represented in the rooms of power? And that's why I set up Black on Board. Who's representing my point of view? There's no way if you have a boardroom of, like I'm on one at the moment, 10 white men who are all over the age of 50 something. When I joined the Board of Housing 21, I was a bright young thing. I was 55, okay? And I was the bright young thing. It's ridiculous. So the decisions that people make in those spaces are only influenced by their experience, their understanding, and their you know, what they've gone through in life. And they don't necessarily represent many of you on this call who are probably in your 20s, 30s, 40s. Your experience of the universe is very different from mine, and we need those rounded points of view. And that's why my answer to the question is yes, it's important to the sector so that we're able to look after every single person that we house appropriately, correctly, safely, fairly, and with compassion, and also treat our colleagues the same way, because this is not just about tenants, it's about our staff, it's about our colleagues, it's about our board, it's about our neighbours, and it's about our communities. Now, for those of you who are aware of my presidency, my president of the Chartered Institute of Housing, you'll know that this was the key point of my presidency, which was diversity in the leadership teams, but particularly in the boardroom, because the boardrooms are where the decisions are being made. So I'm just going to ask as a side for many of you on this call, please consider becoming a board member. You can all do it. You don't need to be old. You don't need to be 65 to be a board member. If you write reports, surveys, reviews, and look at annual accounts, staff reviews, appraisals, reports, you can be a board member. So do not think you have to be ancient to be a board member. We need people like you who are passionate to be in the boardroom of housing associations, charities, schools, organizations out there, Tesco, HSBC. We need diversity in those boardrooms. So this was the slide I mentioned earlier about life. Some of you at the beginning of your career, some of you in the middle. Things will go well, things will maybe not go so well. I mean, who'd have thought when I was 19 that I'd become a CEO of a housing association? I was homeless and I became a CEO of a housing association. And who thought when I was suspended and I couldn't get a job that I would eventually become president of my professional body? So the point is, don't let the down times knock you out. There will be ups and downs. Anticipate and prepare for them. And then the last thing I'll do is still selling Chartered Institute of Housing. Join. It's a great organisation. These are professional standards. You cannot go wrong if you abide by these standards. I recommend them. And also, like I said, for those of you that are not in the social housing space, consider adopting these standards for yourself. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm whizzing through now because my time is up. I hope to give you some time for questions. This is a post I did on LinkedIn at the end of my presidency. My presidency ended just before the end of my presidency, and I was supporting a charity called In My Shoes, which is a charity that recycles shoes and gives them to homeless people or families in poverty. But I did ask a question of the board, and I'll repeat the questions, which are, is the housing sector a sector that treats the staff fairly, especially black and brown staff? Are they being treated fairly? Do the people in power recognize their white privilege? And white privilege doesn't mean you have money. It just means you don't have to worry about going into a store and the security man following you around, or you don't have to worry about being stopped by the police and getting beaten up. You don't have to worry about these things. You're not even going to stop worrying about. That's what white privilege is. It's not about having money. Does it matter if your exec team and leadership team is all white? Is it a problem? Does it matter at all? And does it matter if is there a difference? Does it make a difference if your board is reflective of the communities you serve? Do people in your organization feel they're not being promoted because they're not in the right clique? And do your staff genuinely have the confidence to call out bad behavior and bad practice? That is a sign of a good organization. And does your I love this one, does your organization look as good as your EDI policies? Because we all have fantastic policies and procedures, but if you were to ask a member of staff, is the smile on their face equivalent to the smile in the brochure? Do they genuinely believe that that is the world we live in? And on that note, I was going to share a video with it. It's a 4-minute video. I think maybe you can watch it in your own time. It's a really brilliant video by Channel 4. So you will get the slides. I suggest you watch the video because I want to give you 15 minutes for questions. And my last slide. So thank you for listening. I hope I've been helpful. I feel like I've just spoken about a whole bunch of things because I could do like 7 sessions on each one of these areas and go into a bit more detail, but I hope that's been helpful and I hope you've got loads of questions. So thank you very much, and Lindsay will circulate the slides and please watch that video.
Thank you so much.
I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, and perfect timing. I do think we will ask for some questions now. There's nothing in the chat just yet, so just wait for a few minutes if anyone has got any questions. Amazing opportunity to have Lara right here to answer your questions, so please do ask anything that you might have, any pressing questions. Just thank you, Lara, for all of that information. It was just so, I loved particularly the call to let's get everyone to become board members. Come on, put yourselves out there. We've got lots of you that are doing apprenticeships. That could be something that you could aspire to in the next 12 months, and you can get there. There's lots and lots of boards out there that need younger, diverse voices, and as Lara said, those experiences as well. Peter Swain has asked, what process is it to access Black on board?
Okay, so I guess email me. My contact details are in the slides. The problem I have with Black on Board, I'll confess, is that the people that I want to work with can't afford it, and the people that can afford it, I don't want to work with them. So I'm actually looking to find a way of subsidizing people that can come on the course, because it costs money to do, but I'm passionate about making it affordable and accessible. So yeah, just reach out to me and I'll see how I can support you. Or if you work for an organization that's got a budget, maybe we could do something for the organization and for a group of people, which is the best way to work. If I can get 7 to 10 people, 7 to 15 people for an organization, then it's more cost effective. And I have a 75% success rate, and success is getting you on the board, not finishing the course. Finishing the course is not success. Success is getting you into the boardroom. That's the mission. Absolutely. I saw a few other questions.
Yeah, so Olu Watosin has said, could you kindly share the point you mentioned about being a board member? Not really sure what
okay, I'll try and okay. So the point I'm saying about being a board member is a lot of people think you have to be old and have been a CEO or a director to be a board member, and you don't. You just need to be intelligent, have the ability to read documents and ask questions, and the confidence to present your own point of view. That's all that you need. You don't need a PhD, and you don't have to be head of department. Every single person on this call today can be a board member. You just need to look, just, I guess, put yourself in that headspace that you bring something to the boardroom. And I'll give you an example. People say, oh, I'm too young to be a board member. I'm sure you all know Steve Bartlett. I think that's his name, Steve Bartlett, the young black guy on Dragon's Den.
Mm-hmm.
He was on Dragon's Den before he was 30. Now, no one's going to say he's too young to be on our board. Yeah, so it's not about age, it's about brain cells. What are you bringing to the table? Do you have the confidence to ask the challenging questions and sit in that room and be equal to the people around you? And it's very, very different from a day job where you have a boss and you're subordinate. I hope that's answered your question.
Just to add on to that as well, a lot of boards will offer the ability for people to go and view one of their meetings. If you're interested in taking up a position or applying for a position as a board member, contact that board, contact the chair of that board and ask them if you can just be an observer at one of the meetings to see if it is something you'd be interested in going to do. And my advice on top of what Lara has said is just to apply. Get your applications in, get your name out there. If you're not successful the first time, then it's known that you want to do those things, and you can really put your name out there.
And the other thing I'd say is you do not have to be a board member of a housing organisation. You don't have to be an expert of what that organisation does to be on their board. So you don't all have to just say, I can only do housing. If you're passionate about football, you can be on a board of a football organisation because you're bringing your skills and expertise. I was once on the board of a children's centre. I know nothing. I don't have kids. I know nothing about children apart from the fact that I have nieces. I buy them lots of presents and feed them lots of sugar and send them back to their parents. That's it. But I was on the board because of my housing knowledge, my understanding of property management and my connections with the local authority, not because I was an expert in childcare. So you all have skills, and those skills are required on boards. And the younger you are, the more the boards I want you on my board, because you bring a completely different perspective to all these 50 and 60-year-olds sat around the table who don't know how to use, I don't know, the latest app. Because
it definitely brings a different energy, doesn't it?
We need you in those boardrooms. So let me see where we're. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, we've got another question from Enitan. Are companies just writing EDI policies just to tick the box? Is there nothing that can be done to make it work as they have stipulated?
That is a big question, Anita. I'm not sure I could answer that today, but part of my solution to that is having diversity across organizations. So if you have a diverse senior leadership team and you have a diverse board, and I'm talking about diversity across all the protected characteristics, so it's not just 4 black women and 4 white men, it's old, young, disabled, LGBT, someone from the north, someone from the south, whatever, someone with lived experience, someone who's an academic. So you have that combination, then you're more likely to have less EDI issues because everyone's coming from their own perspective. And then you put that in a mixing bowl, and you hopefully come out with a salad rather than a smoothie, if that makes sense.
Nice, I like that.
You don't want a smoothie, you want a salad where all the bits play their role. Yeah. So
another really great question from Victoria. What tips do you have for challenging differences of opinion? I find my views are often dismissed as a younger woman when challenging male colleagues.
Listen, been there, done that. So I'm not sure I've got the right answers, but I will tell you how I've dealt with it, and it may be right or wrong, I don't know. What I've done over the years, and I worked for a company called Pinnacle. I don't know if you've heard of it. That you can't get more white male Essex than Pinnacle, and then there's just me, one black girl from Tottenham. At the time, I was in Tottenham. So what I've done is over the time in the organisation, you will prove your worth, but it has to be done subtly, because then you become that angry black woman. Or that, and I'm sure you get. I'm not Victoria. I've no idea what ethnicity you are, but I'm talking from my experience. But what I also did is I feel sad saying this, is I let people take the credit for my work. It's just like, because I knew that I know what I know, if that makes sense. So that you can't take it away from me. You can take the credit, but like I always say with people, I'm really good. I have lots of ideas. I'm very creative. I'm always thinking of weird new things that have no one else has thought of. And I know that that well of ideas is not going to dry up. That's who I am. So if you steal one of my ideas, that's fine, because I've got loads more where that came from. So it doesn't really bother me. So that's sort of the psychological way that I've managed to keep myself calm, because there are times when you just want to, I don't advocate violence, you just want to punch that person. I just said that 5 minutes ago. When I said it, no one heard it, but so and so said it. And now you're all listening. So listen, I get you, Victoria. I'm not sure that I've been helpful in my answer, but I've been in that space. And I think sometimes there is a technique to saying, I'm sure I just said that, but in a way where it's not problematic, because sometimes it can become problematic. And it's about managing the people that you work with. Yeah, that's a whole session on how do you manage being dismissed as a younger woman. And I imagine you're working in a predominantly male environment. Is that right, Victoria? Don't know, just guessing. So yeah, but just be confident in the key thing is be confident in your own abilities. Don't let that weigh you down, because
Victoria says yes, presumably to the
thank you, Victoria, because if you know your stuff, Victoria, you know your stuff, and no one can take it away from you. And that's what I've always said, that ultimately I know what I'm doing, and my manager, who's taking credit, one day will be in a room where I'm not there to give him the answers, and he's going to have to deal with that by himself. So yeah.
I was just going to add to that as well, to say, Victoria, if you're ever in an interview situation, those people aren't there to take your answers. You're taking those with you.
Yeah.
I mean, we've still got a few. I mean, there's no more questions in the chat. If anyone has got any questions, just pop those in. Obviously, I can pass any questions over to Lara after the fact as well. I just wanted to ask a question, Lara, if I may, and that is, you gave a really good example of Oduduwa around driving positive engagement and making those changes. I know that's probably a whole other conversation around that positive engagement, but have you got any examples of good practice around driving positive engagement, bringing diverse groups in, that we could maybe go away and look into?
Good question. Oh, let me see. Who do I know? I'm thinking of the good examples of, because most of my work recently has been about diversity in the boardroom. Okay, so I'll focus on that for now. So the good examples are there's an organization called Platform Housing. Is it Platform Housing Group or Platform Housing Association? I can't remember. But Platform Housing have a really good board diversity program that they're sponsoring, and they're reaching out to diverse anybody, staff, residents, people in the local community to be part of this program. And it's almost like a board apprenticeship program, so I think that's really brilliant. So I recommend Platform Must Go. Many thanks for your insight. Thank you, whoever that is. Thank you, Peter. Love you loads. And then also, in terms of organizations that seem to have managed to create a diverse board, I will recommend the one in Manchester, Moscare. I can't remember what it's called now. Moscare something in Manchester. I can't remember the name, but if you put Moss something in Google, it'll come up. It's a housing association based in Manchester, which has a really beautifully diverse board. I love it. And you look at that board and thinking, when they're discussing whatever it is, they're going to have really, that's the one, Moscare St. Vincent's. Thank you, Faye.
Yeah.
That's the one, Faye. Very diverse board, very representative. And then there are organisations like Housing Diversity Network, who are doing lots of work in terms of encouraging, supporting organisations to be more sensitive to diversity in the workplace. And I think most organisations have fabulous policies. That's the thing. I can't think of one that hasn't got a really good policy. The issue is the implementation and whether people genuinely act as their policy says.
And so, hopefully all the people in this room can start to take that on board and start to act.
But if you look at that post I did on LinkedIn, if your organisation can answer those questions positively, then you're doing well.
I highly recommend following Lara on LinkedIn. She's got so many insightful, amazing topics and posts that she puts on there regularly. So please do go along and follow her there. Just want to say a massive thank you to you, Lara, and to everyone who's joined us today. I'm just going to pop a quick feedback link into the chat, if that's okay with everyone. It's just 6 quick questions that can help us to improve these webinars moving forward, or if you've got any topics you'd like to see us discussing, please do let us know in that feedback form. Lara, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm going to send you a copy of the slides over, which Lara has agreed to share with everyone. So video on there for you to watch, all of Lara's contact details if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about what she does. And obviously, if you've got any further questions from today, if you want to pass them through to us, we can get those answered for you. So thank you, everybody. Lara, massive pleasure. Thank you
Lindsay, very grateful. Thank you very much. Bye everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.